Welcome and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven Show. I'm your host, Nikki Rausch, your own personal sales maven, here to offer you tips and strategies and techniques to truly master your sales conversations. Okay, so here's a question. Have you ever received feedback that you're warm, that you're approachable, that you're super easy to talk to, yet you don't always come across as the expert that you truly are? If so, this episode today may just change that for you. I was working with a client recently and she had shared a story that she had completed a training. And one of the pieces of feedback that came was that exact piece of the question that I just asked you. She's warm, she's super approachable, and she's easy to talk to. She's very, very likable, yet lacks some authority when she's talking about who she is, what her business is, how clients benefit from working with her. And now, what surprised me about this is that she paid good money first to go through this program. And then they didn't actually give her any strategies or techniques of how to change this idea. So, you don't want to change this part of your personality, the warmth, the easy to talk to, the approachable piece. But if you need to learn how to add some authority, like people are paying good money for this. So, let's teach some concepts and some skills. So we spent the rest of our strategy session and I was showing her and teaching her some NLP strategies of how to project more authority. And of course, that's what spurred this particular podcast episode, is to want to share these with you as well, because I don't know, maybe it's just me. I know I get feedback all the time from coaches and stuff that say I teach too much, I give too much. Okay. I would just rather that people are walking around feeling like the best version of themselves. And so I hope that that is what you get a takeaway from this particular episode. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You're absolutely perfect. And you can always up your game when it comes to communication. And there are true strategies that you can implement that will assist you in doing that. So that's what we're going to talk about. Now, the other point that I want to make before I actually get into the strategies is that authority really isn't about becoming someone you're not. I don't believe in that at all. As a matter of fact, I think being yourself, like you're perfect the way you are, and you can learn how to be more strategic in how you show up in conversations. And that doesn't mean you have to change your personality. You don't have to get rid of the warmth. You don't have to get rid of the approachability, the easy to talk to. You can add some skills to that that will up your credibility and your authority and will allow for you to be recognized as the expert you truly are without having to pretend like you're something else. I know I've shared this story. Well, I've shared it many times, but I think I've shared it on the podcast. I remember being in a pretty high priced program, coaching program that I was in a few years back, and they brought in an outside expert to speak on this idea of really growing your authority. And this particular expert was sharing about this goal that she had achieved that was pretty significant. So I wanted to ask about strategy because I love strategy. Obviously, I teach strategy. If you give me a strategy, I can follow a strategy. That's why I teach strategy, right? Like, give me the steps. Like, give me something here. And so I'd asked her a very specific question about her process and what she had done to take these steps to achieve this success that she was mentioning. And her response to me was, Nikki, the first thing you have to do is decide that you're famous and act famous, and people will believe you. And I was like, what? That's not a strategy. There's no structure there. There's no steps. That's a nothing burger answer to me. I was so frustrated with this. I actually wanted to just jump off the Zoom call, the training. I was so annoyed because to me, like I get it, not every expert can, and for many reasons, right? This is why I do the Mastering Excellence series. Like not everybody can really articulate their process and their structure. But if you're going to go speak on a topic, you should at least have some kind of meat on that bone because otherwise I don't know. I guess to me, like the inspirational talk feels cheap without, if you can't really back it up. So it felt very cheap. And, um, and so I don't want to give the cheap answer. I want to give you structure. I want to give you strategy, things that you can actually do. Now, why this is important and why I'm bringing this to you in the podcast is because our brains are incredibly fast at making judgments, right? There's studies out there about how quickly our brains make judgments and how quickly, uh, once we make that judgment, like we've decided and we're not likely to change our mind. And it takes a lot to change somebody's mind once they've made a judgment about you. So if you're not even getting the chance to establish your credibility and your authority in the early part of a conversation with somebody, then they may have made these judgments about you, and it can be very hard to change their mind. So do everything you can to set yourself up for success, right? So the things that we're going to be talking about today, I have three, and it really is about the facial expressions. It's about your vocal tone. It's about your body language. Like these nonverbal signals reinforce your expertise. So, and also don't unintentionally compete with it, because if you're not paying attention to these things, sometimes there's things that your face, your body, your voice are doing that will erode some of that credibility and will allow people to make judgments that aren't really fair and are not going to set you and them up for success in the relationship. So, the good news is this is all within your control. These are all really simple things, and they might seem challenging, but like with anything, I hope, anything that I give and teach and guide around, it's about practice, right? It really truly is about practice. So the first one that I want to talk about, and this is the one that I shared with my client too, and I love to share this one because this was one that I learned right before I started my NLP journey, but it was one of the reasons that I like signed up for the course and got on a plane 1 weekend a month for 2 years to go study NLP, was because my NLP teacher, she wasn't yet my NLP teacher, gave me some feedback about my face, my facial expressions. And I know I've probably talked about this on the podcast. You might not have heard it. So I'm going to talk about it again because it's such an important piece and often something that I think as women, we forget to pay attention to. So, the idea is to learn how to relax the muscles in your face when you're talking about who you are, what you know, what your expertise is. This will increase your perception or the other person's perception of authority. Now, often as women, we want to be seen as warm and approachable and nice. And so we smile. Like that can be, for some of us, that can be a very go to. And that was mine, definitely at the time. And still, that is like when I'm under stress, I probably will smile more because it's like it's easy to fall back on. Like it's really easy for me to revert back to like just smile. I think it was from a lot of things. It was my childhood, but also I danced in college on the dance team. And it was always like, they used to always say chest eyes. So that was always like to put your shoulders back and, project authority, but also to put a big old smile on your face. Right. So smiling just became a very much a part of who I was and how I showed up. But when you're smiling, when you're talking about your authority, when you're talking about your services, when you're talking about what you do, it can often send the message that you're a little bit unsure or that you're not, it's not very serious. And so that can diminish your credibility, your authority in the conversation. So learning how to relax the muscles in your face. And so this isn't necessarily about having the RBI, right? Which I'm sure you know what that means. It's not about necessarily that. Did I say that wrong? I think it's RBF. Sorry. I don't know what the I stands for. So RBF. It's see, I always go back to smile. That's like my go-to. Um Not maybe you could hear it on the podcast unless you're watching the video, then you can see it. But the idea here is if you can relax the muscles in your face, so it's not about scowling, it's not about any of that. It's just about relaxing the muscles in your face when you're talking about who you are, what you offer, the benefits your clients receive. You will be taken more serious. It will come across more credible. Now, that doesn't mean that that has to be your go-to for the whole conversation with a prospect or with a client. The nice thing is that you can jump from one to the other, right? Like it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So in that first, that first introduction, when you're getting to know each other or you're talking about like who they are and what prompted them, like you can show that smile, you can let that come through. And when you start talking about this is what we're going to spend our time doing, your pre-frame, you want to relax the muscles in your face. So, and if you don't know what a pre-frame is, that is the way you set yourself up for safety and your client up for safety in the conversation. So it's a really important part of the conversation. So when you're pre-framing, and anybody who's a client of mine listening, they know exactly what I'm talking about because I talk about pre-framing so much. Relax those muscles in your face and see what kind of reaction that you get when you do that. Now, the second strategy that I want to share with you today is about finishing your sentences with clarity, or excuse me, with certainty. That's what I'm trying to say here. Finish your sentences with certainty. So one of the quickest ways to project confidence is with your vocal inflection. When your voice lifts at the end of your statements, it can sound like you're asking a question versus making a statement. So, for instance, if I were to say to you, so I've been coaching entrepreneurs for 13 years. Did you hear how my voice curled up at the end of that sentence? And it kind of sounds like, are you sure, Nikki? Are you sure you've been coaching for 13 years? But if I say, I've been coaching entrepreneurs for 13 years, my voice now, the inflection, it curls down at the end of my sentence. This is a really easy way to project more authority in the conversation. Now, again, this isn't about trying to be somebody you're not. It's about using strategy so that you are allowing the other person to see you as the expert that you are, right? Like there's no falsehood here. It's just being more strategic in the conversation. So it's a way to help build trust. So the other person doesn't feel like she seems really unsure of herself. Now I'm not sure of her. So should I actually hire her and pay her money? So you want to project that authority, and voice inflection is a great way to do this. Now, this one takes practice, like all of them. They take practice. This is one that I practice sometimes still today when I'm saying certain things and I know that I need to practice. And it's something that, my husband and I joke about a lot because this is one of the ones that he knows from my teaching. And so we'll say things to each other, like we'll intentionally curl our voice up at the end of our sentences just from a joking standpoint. So then we look at each other and we're like, are you sure? And we both do this, and it's kind of a playful thing. So it's a good way to practice if you get somebody to play with you around this. So that's another way to kind of build that muscle for yourself to finish your sentences with certainty. Now, you can also do this by recording something, or if you have a recording of yourself, you've been on a podcast, maybe you have a podcast, or you have a training that you've done, watch it and listen. Now, without critiquing every little thing about yourself, right? Because most of us are so self-critical. What I really would encourage you to just pay attention to is how you're ending your sentences, the inflection, and then start to notice, like, are you curling up or curling down at the end of your sentences? Pay attention to that. And then you can decide, is this something that you want to work on to improve your skill set on projecting certainty when you speak? Okay. So easy way to pay attention and practice is to watch something that you've done or listen to something that you've done and listen for that inflection. And if you don't have anything like that, then go listen to your voicemail that you recorded on your phone. Call yourself, listen to your voicemail, and pay attention to the inflection. Are you curling up? Are you curling down? Now, if you're somebody who naturally curls down, like that's a really common thing for you, you could actually use this episode as a way to think about how to be more approachable if you have a natural curl down all the time. And one of the ways that you'll know is when you ask a question, somebody assumes that you're making a statement instead of asking a question. So it's like, did you complete that yet? That was a little, let me be a little bit more. Did you complete that yet? Does it sound like I really am curious? Or if I say, did you complete that yet? You hear the curl up, right? So if you're somebody that when you ask somebody a question, they get offended easily and they act like you're making a statement or a judgment, that can be an indicator that you have a really strong curl down inflection on your voice. Congratulations, it works for authority. But if you need to add more warmth and approachability, then you can learn and practice curling up when you're asking questions. And you'll find that people are more inclined to want to answer those questions and they'll feel more relaxed and easy around you if you are struggling with that. Okay, so we're going to move on. Here's the third one, and it has to do with your body language. Let your body language reinforce your message. So your body often communicates before your words do. Now, in NLP, I learned years ago, when I was studying this, there was a study done, and there's been many other studies done. So I always refer back to the one that I learned, which was the Mahabarian study, where they broke communication down into 3 chunks of pie, like a pie chart, right? And there were 3 categories, 3 slices of pie in the pie chart. There were your words, there was the voice inflection, voice quality, and then the last one was body language, which also included facial expressions. And of those 3 slices of pie, depending on if you like pie or not, I love pie. My husband just made me a coconut cream pie for my birthday. It was delicious. So when I think about the pie, what slice of the pie do I want? I want the one that has to do with body language and facial expressions because it's 55% of the pie. Like, yeah, yes, please, I'll take that. And then 38% of the pie is voice inflection. And then 7% of the pie is words. That was the study that I learned. So when I'm thinking about body language, facial expressions, and I already gave you a strategy around facial expressions, so it's going to contribute to this 55%. If you're like me and you like pie, you want that big slice, right? You definitely don't want that little teeny tiny slice of words. So with the big slice, there's some ways that you can project credibility and authority with your body language. One is you want to sit and or stand tall, right? So I know if you're listening, you can't actually see this, but if you're watching, you don't want to be slumped over when you're talking about who you are and what you do. You hear my voice even changes. But if I sit up tall, my voice goes back to that little bit more projected, right? So you're going to relax your shoulders, your head. You want to have your head level. So you're looking straight on to the other person. If you're standing, you would plant your feet. If you're sitting, you just want to think about evenly distributing the weight on both of your hips. Now, if you are sitting and you're listening to this podcast, you could play with me a little bit and you could shift your weight to like one side, one hip, and shift your weight and then say something about who you are and what you do. And then go back to the power position where your weight is evenly distributed. And now say that same statement about who you are and what you do. Chances are you will feel more authoritative. And definitely from the listener or the watcher in this particular case, it will come across as having more authority. So, this idea of allowing yourself to be grounded in your body is an important piece for projecting authority. So when your body looks grounded, your words come across grounded. Like, so be grounded. I feel like I'm stepping into Crispin Spaeth. If you know her, she's so incredibly brilliant. And she talks about and teaches people around their body and how it helps with movement and projecting authority. So I do highly recommend Crispin if this is something that you need some more practice with. All right. So as we bring this particular episode to a close, the idea here is to notice that none of these strategies require you to change who you are or your personality. It just simply helps you align your nonverbal communication with your expertise that you already have. So, a big misconception is that authority is really something that you have to earn. You have to be more polished, you have to be more impressive, and that's just really not true. Authority can grow when your communication reflects your competence. So, the goal isn't to convince people that you're an expert. You may have heard me talk about this before, that in sales, your job is not to convince anybody of anything. The goal is to remove, in this case, the distractions that keep people from recognizing your expertise, the expert you already are. So making sure that your body language, your voice inflection, that these things are contributing to the message that you want to project out into the world and not distracting from them. So my invitation to you this week is to choose one of these three strategies. So whether it be relaxing the muscles in your face, whether it be paying attention to your voice inflection or paying attention to your body language to help with that certainty piece, is pick one of them and just practice. You don't have to change all three if they all, and chances are you don't even need to. There's probably one, maybe two, that with a tiny little tweak to what you're doing is going to really enhance the message. So pick the one or the two that you need to practice and just practice on your next Zoom call. Even if you're not the one who's teaching, maybe you're just showing up as a participant, you can still project on your Zoom call, right? Or if it's a phone call, play with the voice inflection. Or if you're going to a networking meeting or whatever you're doing this week in your business, just decide this is the one and this is the one I'm going to practice. Okay. And then notice, does that change the way people are perceiving you? Does it also change the way that you feel like you're coming across in the conversation? Is it contributing and enhancing the message that you're sending? Or is it distracting? And then you can decide to do something different. All right. As always, I'm wishing you continued success. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for continuing to listen to the podcast. And may I ask a favor? Would you be willing to share this podcast episode with somebody who you think might benefit from learning these strategies? Now, when you share the episode, please be careful about how you share it. Don't say to them, hey, you should listen to this episode because you really need help with this. Better to say something like, hey, I learned something in this episode that I have implemented and have found it to be successful. And I'm wondering if it's something you might be interested in as well. So you don't leave somebody feeling pinched by sharing an episode of like, you really need help with this. Instead, it's more like, here's something that I have found valuable. Would you be interested in it as well? Okay. Thank you so much. I am wishing you continued success in all that you're doing. Have a fantastic rest of your day.